You didn't decide to keep going. Your thumb just moved, a small southward flick, and the screen gave you more. That's the whole transaction. No click, no page turn, no natural pause where you'd normally ask yourself, asterisk, is this still what I want? Asterisk. The bottom of the screen isn't an ending. It's a seam the design hides from you. A zipper the system unzips the moment your attention might break. You're not reading anymore. Not really. You're watching a conveyor belt pass in front of your face while your hand performs a motion so practiced it's nearly autonomic. You could stop. You have every reason to stop. But the architecture has removed the signal that tells the brain enough. And without it, your conscious mind is just a passenger. There's a famous experiment. A bowl of soup, rigged to refill from underneath, never emptying no matter how many spoonfuls the person takes. People eating from normal bowls stop when the bowl is empty. Visual cue, satiety, done. People with the bottomless bowl eat 73% more, and when asked, they don't report feeling fuller. They just didn't get the signal that the meal was over. Your feed is that bowl. No empty bottom. No, you have reached the end. Just a silent, constant replenishment that bypasses the brain's satiety mechanism entirely. Hunger has nothing to do with it. It's the absence of closure that keeps you swallowing. The brain looks for endings. It's not a preference, it's a perceptual necessity. When you read a book, the page has a bottom. When you watch a film, credits roll. Even conversations have goodbyes. These are called stop cues, and your prefrontal cortex relies on them to exit one task and reassess whether to continue. The infinite scroll removes them surgically. No footer. No pagination. No, you've caught up. The feed doesn't ask if you want more, it simply provides more, preempting the question before your conscious mind can form it. Your decision-making circuitry, already fatigued by a day of micro-choices, is bypassed entirely. The loop becomes reflexive. See, flick, see, flick. The part of you that decides anything is offline, resting, while your thumb keeps the world coming. And it's not neutral content. It's calibrated. The algorithm knows what makes your pulse tick up by 6 beats, what makes your pupils hold steady, what keeps your finger from switching apps. Intermittent variable rewards, the same reinforcement schedule that Skinner's pigeons peck themselves to exhaustion for, are stitched into the feed. Most posts are mundane, but every 7th or 12th or 20th scroll delivers something that hits, a laugh, a jolt of outrage, a friend's face, a body you want. Dopamine fires, not at the reward itself, but at the asterisk possibility asterisk of reward, a flicker of anticipation that arrives just before your thumb completes the motion. The scroll is not a search for content. It's a search for the next dopamine prediction error, the tiny surprise that says asterisk this time, something good. Asterisk, and your brain will chase that flicker past the point of exhaustion, past hunger, past the bladder's quiet protest. Because the architecture never says stop. There's a particular state your brain enters around the 20-minute mark. It's not focus. Focus implies effort, direction, a mind aimed at something. This is the opposite. Your attention is diffuse, passive, pulled forward not by intention, but by a low-grade current you barely feel. Some researchers call it attentional capture without awareness, but the older word for it is closer to hypnosis. Your alpha brain waves, associated with relaxed wakefulness, shift toward a pattern, that resembles the moments just before sleep, not fully conscious, not fully unconscious, suspended in a twilight where the difference between "I want to keep going" and "I can't stop" dissolves completely. You are not choosing. You are drifting. The scroll itself becomes the point. Not what's on the screen, just the motion, the rhythm, the gentle friction of thumb against glass. The content could be anything. After a while, it barely registers. Faces blur. Headlines become patterns of letters your brain processes, but doesn't interpret. You scroll past things you'd normally stop for, and a faint part of you notices, but the momentum is its own gravity. Stopping would mean breaking the motion, and breaking the motion would mean facing the quiet, the empty space where something uncomfortable might be waiting. The scroll is not entertainment anymore. It's avoidance, lubricated by a design that never asks you to admit what you're avoiding. The clock becomes unreadable. Not literally. You could glance at the corner of the screen and see the digits, but the meaning of time detaches from its measure. 10 minutes and 40 minutes feel strangely similar, both flattened into the same continuous now. This is temporal dissociation, a known effect of flow states, but the infinite scroll weaponizes it. Flow normally requires challenge, skill, a clear goal. The scroll requires only passivity and the removal of endpoints. Without a finish line, your brain stops marking intervals. The hippocampus, which timestamps experience into memory, receives no signal that one moment ended and another began. You surface eventually, blink, and the hour has vanished into a content trench you can barely recall. You might have noticed a strange fatigue afterward, a heaviness behind the eyes, a cognitive flatness that's different from physical exhaustion. That's ego depletion, or what's now understood as the metabolic cost of sustained self-regulation. Your prefrontal cortex spent 60 minutes trying to interrupt the scroll and failing. Each failed attempt burning glucose without changing behavior. The part of your brain that makes choices, that exercises will, that says asterisk enough, stand up, look away asterisk, it fired and lost every time. Not because you're weak, because the design removed its target. You can't interrupt a process that has no breakpoints. You can't exit a room that has no door. The fatigue you feel is the cost of fighting an invisible opponent and losing, and then feeling somehow responsible for the loss. The machine learns faster than you do. Every pause you make, every hover of the thumb, every post you slow down for, every video that loops because you couldn't look away, it all feeds back into the architecture. The system isn't just removing stop cues. It's learning your specific vulnerabilities to them, adjusting the feed's velocity to match the exact rhythm that keeps your pupils dilated and your finger moving. Some users scroll harder after a negative emotion, some after a positive one. The algorithm doesn't care which. It just maps the groove and deepens it. Your feed becomes a personalized, bottomless trench whose walls are exactly the height of your attention span. Trying to climb out feels like fighting a shape that fits you too well. And here's the quiet cruelty. The content itself deteriorates the longer you scroll. The algorithm knows you're fatigued. It knows your cognitive resistance is lower, your discrimination blurrier, your outrage threshold easier to trip. So it feeds you the cheaper stuff, more extreme, more emotional, more stripped of nuance, not because you like it, but because your tired brain reacts to it automatically. Outrage spikes cortisol, which briefly restores a feeling of alertness. Shock snaps you out of the hypnosis for 3 seconds. The scroll uses your own neurochemistry to keep you scrolling past the point of dignity, past your own values, past the version of yourself that would choose differently. You are not being entertained anymore. You are being managed chemically by a feed that knows your brain better than you do. There's a moment right when you finally put the phone down that feels almost like vertigo. The room comes back too fast. The lighting feels wrong. Your inner ear and your eyes briefly disagree about stillness. You've been motionless so long your proprioceptive system recalibrated to the tiny movements of thumb and eyeball, and now standing up feels foreign. The silence in the room is thick and slightly accusatory. You don't remember what you were doing before you sat down. The original intention to check one message, to look up one thing died somewhere around minute 12, buried under a sedimentary layer of content you will never retrieve. You are left holding a black mirror full of ghosts you've already forgotten, wondering faintly where your evening went. The scroll is often framed as a failure of self-control, but that framing is a convenient fiction for the people who build the architecture. What you experienced was not weakness. It was behavioral engineering that operates below the level where willpower lives. Your brain possesses a brake system, the right inferior frontal gyrus, which is responsible for inhibiting action. The infinite scroll does not argue with it. It simply removes every cue that would trigger the brake, and then it feeds the accelerator with variable rewards while your fuel gauge is hidden. You cannot stop a process you do not notice you are continuing. The design's true victory is not that it kept you scrolling, it's that it convinced you this was your choice. Nothing in the feed ever said, keep going. It just never said stop, and your brain, left without a signal, filled the silence with momentum. The exit lasts minutes, sometimes less. The phone is on the table, dark, and you are determined to read a book, cook a meal, hold a thought, longer than the space between 2 ads. But something has carved a groove in your attention, and the groove has a slope. Within moments of island's water boiling, a page ending, a scene changing, your hand twitches toward the device. Not because you want anything from it. The desire is negative space, a craving to fill the gap, to seal the tiny rupture of stillness before it widens into something uncomfortable. Your brain learned the groove so well that boredom now registers not as a neutral state, but as a withdrawal symptom. The architecture didn't just remove stop cues during the scroll. It trained your resting state to seek the scroll as baseline, to treat its absence as error. You pick it up, unlock it, and the feed is still there, exactly where you left it. No judgment, no friction. Just the same seamless replenishment, ready to receive you. And here's the most elegantly engineered part of the trap. You now feel relief, the mild agitation, the empty itch of unoccupied attention, the nameless unease of a room too quiet. They all dissolve the moment your thumb makes its first southward flick. The architecture creates a low-grade distress signal and then sells you the antidote in the same gesture. You didn't want to scroll. You wanted to stop wanting to scroll, and scrolling was the fastest way to silence that second-order desire. The loop is now complete. The feed is no longer a thing you do. It has become the place you go to not feel the fact of not doing. Somewhere beneath the surface, a strange division is occurring. There's the you that scrolls, thumb moving, eyes tracking, brain absorbing, and then there's a second you, slightly behind, watching the first one with a growing sense of distance. This second self notes the hour. It registers the dryness in your eyes. It remembers you wanted to sleep early tonight, but it's been outvoted. The split is not psychosis. It's a mild dissociative state common to prolonged passive consumption. Your executive function, the part that plans and prioritizes, has been decoupled from your motor system. The loop runs on its own circuit, and the observing self becomes an audience to its own behavior, watching a film where the protagonist refuses to leave the room. The strangeness is that you can feel both at once, the watcher and the watched, and neither has the power to end the scene. Memory suffers quietly in the background. You will not recall most of what you saw tonight. Maybe a headline, maybe a face, but the vast river of content will wash through you, leaving almost no trace. Because the hippocampus requires moments to consolidate experience, and the scroll offers none, no pauses, no distinct events, just one long, uninterrupted stream that your brain eventually stops trying to encode as separate entries. The hour becomes neurologically a single blurred object present while it's happening, gone the moment it stops. This is why scrolling feels, in retrospect, like stolen time. Not because you weren't conscious, but because you were conscious without creating memory. The architecture didn't rob you of your life. It robbed you of the ability to keep it. You stand up, eventually. The phone stays in your hand. You carry it to the kitchen, to the bathroom, to the bedroom, as though the scrolling might resume at any moment, as though the feed is not an app, but a room you stepped out of briefly. Your brain hasn't exited the groove. It's merely paused the motion, holding the potential energy of the next flick like a breath waiting to be exhaled. The architecture has no end point, so your mind supplies none. You will return, not because something calls you, but because nothing does, because the silence between tasks now feels louder than it used to, and the scroll has become the default filler for every gap your attention encounters. The bottomless bowl is not in your phone. It is in you now, a learned hunger that feeds itself on the act of feeding. The signal never stops. The feed is still out there, assembling itself for your return, learning from the data you left in the grooves of your absence. It does not miss you. It does not need you. It simply waits, bottomless, patient, perfectly designed to outlast any resolution you make in the dark. You close your eyes. The phantom motion of your thumb persists a moment longer, a small ghost swipe in the air above the sheets, and then it stills. The transmission ends here. The scroll, of course, does not.